Daniel grew up in a two-bedroom apartment with 5 people. He remembers the electricity being shut off once. He remembers his mother arguing about rent. He remembers hearing the sentence, "We can't afford that," more times than he can count. As a kid, money didn't represent opportunity. It represented safety, or the lack of it. At 28, Daniel finally landed a high-paying job in tech. Overnight, his income doubled. His bank account grew faster than it ever had. And within 6 months, so did his lifestyle. Luxury apartment, brand new SUV, designer wardrobe, fine dining every weekend. From the outside, Daniel looked successful. But something strange happened. The more Daniel earned, the more he spent. Not recklessly, not irresponsibly, but compulsively. Because every purchase came with a feeling. Relief, comfort, validation. For the first time in his life, he wasn't the kid who couldn't afford things. He was the one picking up the bill. Psychology has a name for this: emotional spending. Most people think overspending is a math problem. It isn't. It's an emotional one. If you've ever noticed that the moment you start earning more money, you start spending more money, this is not because you're irresponsible. It's because something deeper is happening. According to psychology, people who overspend when their income rises aren't bad with money. They're trying to heal something. And it is far more common than people realize. My name is Sylvia. I am one of the 3 pioneers of a fixed light. I am a psychologist who has spent so much time in research and pattern behavior as touching finance. And today, I am going to break down the 5 psychological reasons people overspend, especially when life finally starts going right. Because until you understand the emotion behind spending, you will never control it. 1. Overspending as emotional relief from scarcity. When income rises, the brain releases dopamine, the reward chemical linked to motivation and pleasure. But for many people, that dopamine rush isn't really about joy, it's about relief. If you grew up in scarcity, where bills were stressful, where "we can't afford that" was a constant phrase, where money determined whether the light stayed on, your nervous system didn't just learn about budgeting, it learned that money equals survival. It learned that money equals safety. So when you finally start earning more, something deeper than logic activates. Your brain doesn't say, "Great, let's optimize investments." It says, "Now I'm safe. Now I can breathe. Now I matter." And that's powerful. So when you upgrade to the nicer apartment, buy the luxury car, or purchase the expensive watch, you're not just buying a product, you're buying distance from your past. You're buying proof that you're no longer the kid who had to check price tags twice. You're buying emotional closure. But here's the trap. Dopamine adapts quickly. The brain normalizes new circumstances. What once felt extraordinary becomes standard. The relief fades. The nervous system resets. And that old insecurity quietly whispers, "What if this still isn't enough?" So you upgrade again and again. It was never about the item. It was about soothing the version of you who once felt small, unstable, or powerless. Until you heal that version internally, your income will always rise to meet your spending externally. 2. Overspending as identity construction. Let me tell you about Maya. In high school, Maya was invisible. Not unpopular, not dramatic, just overlooked. She wore the same outfits on rotation, avoided conversations about vacations, and learned how to shrink herself in rooms where she felt she didn't belong. Money, to her, wasn't just currency. It was status. It was access. It was belonging. Fast forward 10 years. Maya becomes a successful marketing executive. Her income triples. Her network expands. And something else expands too. Her lifestyle. Luxury handbags, high-end restaurants, first-class flights. But none of it is random. Every purchase is psychological. Psychologists call this symbolic self-completion. When you feel incomplete in one area of your life, you use symbols to signal completion. The luxury car says, "I'm successful." The designer logo says, "I belong." The expensive vacation says, "I've made it." These objects aren't just things, they're identity signals, and social media intensifies it. Every post becomes proof. Every caption becomes validation. The likes become micro-affirmations that the new identity is real. But here's the trap. If your identity depends on external symbols, it becomes expensive to maintain. You don't just buy the bag, you have to keep buying the next bag. You don't just upgrade once, you have to stay upgraded. Because identity built on consumption requires constant reinforcement. True security begins when your sense of self isn't dependent on what you display. But that kind of stability requires emotional reflection most people avoid. It's easier to upgrade your wardrobe than upgrade your self-worth. 3. Overspending as delayed reward compensation. There's a psychological phenomenon called compensatory consumption. It happens when someone feels they've been deprived for too long and finally gets the chance to make up for it. Imagine someone who spent 10 years in survival mode, no vacations, no upgraded wardrobe, saying no to dinners out, constant financial stress, every decision filtered through necessity. They postponed enjoyment in the name of responsibility. Then one day, the promotion comes, the salary increases, the pressure eases, and instantly the brain responds, "You deserve this. You earned this. You sacrificed long enough." And that voice isn't irrational, it's human. The problem is that the brain doesn't understand moderation. It doesn't say, "Let's upgrade carefully." It says, "Restore balance now." So the spending accelerates. The international trip gets booked. The car gets replaced. The apartment gets upgraded. The lifestyle leaps forward in one dramatic motion. It feels justified because emotionally, it is. It feels like reclaiming lost time. But financial systems don't run on emotion. They run on math. Income increases don't cancel the power of compounding. Large jumps in fixed expenses permanently raise your baseline cost of living. The real danger appears when "I deserve this" becomes a financial philosophy instead of an occasional reward. Deserving something doesn't mean it won't cost you future freedom. Pleasure today can quietly delay independence tomorrow. Ironically, extreme delayed gratification often leads to explosive rebound spending. When people suppress enjoyment for too long, they swing hard in the opposite direction. The solution isn't endless deprivation, it's balance. Controlled enjoyment prevents emotional snapbacks, because when discipline turns into pressure, indulgence becomes inevitable. 4. Overspending as stress regulation. Here's something uncomfortable. A lot of spending has very little to do with money. It has everything to do with emotional regulation. Bad day at work? You order food instead of cooking. Argument with your partner? You scroll and buy something online. Feeling behind in life? You upgrade something, phone, clothes, furniture, just to feel momentum. In those moments, the purchase isn't about the item, it's about relief. Spending activates the brain's reward center. It provides distraction. It creates a sense of control. It delivers stimulation in an otherwise overwhelming day. And in modern life, stress isn't occasional, it's constant. Now let's look at what's happening neurologically. Stress increases cortisol. Cortisol creates tension, discomfort, and urgency. Your body wants that feeling reduced. When you buy something, your brain releases dopamine. Dopamine temporarily lowers perceived stress. You feel lighter, calmer, rewarded. But here's the trap. The bill shows up later. The financial strain increases long-term stress. That raises cortisol again. And the brain, seeking relief, reaches for another dopamine hit. It becomes a biochemical loop. Retail therapy works, and that's exactly why it's dangerous. It solves the emotional spike in the moment, but quietly compounds anxiety in the background. The wealthiest individuals often interrupt this loop differently. They build alternative stress outlets: exercise, meditation, skill building, strategic planning. These activities also release dopamine, but they build competence rather than debt. It's the difference between consumption dopamine and competence dopamine. One leaves you financially weaker. The other leaves you psychologically stronger. And over time, that difference becomes enormous. 5. Overspending as social belonging. Humans are tribal by nature. Long before money existed, survival depended on belonging to a group. Being accepted meant protection. Being excluded meant danger. That wiring never disappeared. It just evolved. Today, instead of competing for physical survival, we compete for status and inclusion. We constantly measure ourselves against those around us. If your peer group upgrades, you feel it. New car, new house, luxury vacations. Even if no one says anything directly, comparison activates insecurity. Psychologists call this social comparison theory. Your brain is always benchmarking your status relative to your environment. When income rises, something subtle often happens. People expand their social circle upward. Higher earners, more affluent spaces, more polished environments. And without consciously deciding to, they begin adjusting their spending to match. Dinner reservations move from casual to exclusive. Clothing standards shift. Vacations become destinations instead of road trips. Expectations inflate quietly. Nobody wants to be the cheap one. Nobody wants to feel like the only person holding back. So, spending escalates. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Belonging purchased through lifestyle is fragile. If your acceptance in a group depends on your spending level, you're not secure. You're renting your identity. True belonging survives honesty. It survives boundaries. It survives a simple, "That's not in my budget right now." Real financial strength often requires temporarily stepping outside status games. It may mean declining invitations. It may mean looking modest in rooms where flashiness is normal. That feels uncomfortable, but it's powerful. Because when your belonging isn't tied to spending, your money stops being your social admission ticket, and that changes everything. The real root: safety, worth, and enoughness. At the core of overspending are three emotional needs: safety, worth, and enoughness. If you once felt unsafe, you may overspend to feel secure. If you once felt invisible, you may overspend to feel significant. If you once felt not enough, you may overspend to prove that you are. Money amplifies whatever is unresolved. It doesn't fix it. That's why someone can double their income and still feel anxious, because emotional wounds don't heal with direct deposit notifications. They heal with awareness. Reflection. Sometimes therapy, often deep self-honesty. Ask yourself, when I spend impulsively, what am I trying to feel? Relief? Validation? Control? Celebration? Revenge on my past? The purchase is rarely the real goal, the emotion is. So how do you break the cycle? You don't fix emotional spending with spreadsheets alone. Budgets matter, tracking matters, but emotional spending isn't born from math, it's born from impulse, memory, and unmet needs. So the first real solution isn't a tighter budget, it's a pause. Before a large purchase, interrupt the momentum. Create space between the urge and the action. Ask yourself a few uncomfortable questions. If nobody saw this, would I still want it? What emotion am I chasing right now? Is this purchase solving the feeling, or just distracting me from it? That pause is powerful. It shifts you from reaction to awareness, and awareness weakens the pattern. Next, replace impulsive rewards with intentional ones. If your income rises, celebrate, but do it deliberately, not explosively. Instead of a dramatic lifestyle leap, upgrade slowly. Let your nervous system adjust to the new level of income without trying to immediately convert it into visible status. Build safety first. Increase savings. Strengthen your buffer. Invest consistently. Let your financial foundation thicken before your lifestyle expands. When your base is solid, enjoyment feels lighter and less desperate. Because true financial peace isn't about earning more, it's about feeling safe without constant upgrading. Some of the calmest wealthy people live below their means, not because they're forced to, but because they no longer use consumption to regulate emotion. Their confidence isn't tied to what they display. Their security is internal, and internal security is surprisingly inexpensive. Here's the irony. The moment you stop needing money to prove something, you finally start keeping it. The moment you stop using spending to feel safe, you actually become safe. And the moment you stop trying to look like you made it, you begin building something that lasts. Overspending isn't a character flaw, it's an emotional pattern. And patterns can be rewritten, but only when you're honest about what you're really buying. I hope you learned something today. If you did, share this with someone who needs clarity. My name is Sylvia, and this is A Fix Light.